India has the highest number of out-of-school girls anywhere in the world. We also have the highest number of child brides anywhere on the planet, and the highest number of women and girls in sexual and other forms of slavery. The reason for this is that my goat is an asset and my girl is a liability. There's a huge mindset issue that rules all levels of gender dynamics in our country. So to try and impact that, we started Educate Girls 8 years ago. To work in critical gender gap districts, to go door to door to find every single girl who's out of school, to bring her into the school system, make sure she's staying and learning. Because it's a mindset problem, the way we work is that we create a champion for girls' education at a village level. They're called Team Balika. They're young, educated, passionate individuals who go door to door in their own villages and find out of school girls. Once they find them, they work with the community to enroll them into the school system, and then finally come inside the classroom and teach 3 times a week. So the outcomes that we're delivering are enrollment, retention, and learning. In the last 8 years, we have found 110,000 out-of-school girls who were either dropped out or never enrolled and brought them back into the school system. We've improved learning outcomes for over 600,000 children. So the Development Impact Bond is essentially a new mechanism for financing social impact. And that's what we're testing through this particular transaction. And it's in essence a pay for performance contract. So you do payment by results. In our case, in the Educate Girls Development Impact Bond, the 2 outcomes that you're paying for, one is enrollment. So every out of school girl you find that you enroll successfully, there's a payment trigger. And the second piece is learning. So every unit of improvement for each child's learning, there's a payment trigger for that. In our case, it's even more rigorous because it's a treatment versus control. So if my child moves up 2 or 3 units of learning, and in a regular government school a child moves up 2 units, then I will get paid for the difference, which may be just the 1 unit of difference. So that's how the contract is set up in really broad terms. So there's several key parties involved. One is a service provider, and that is Educate Girls on the ground, and we're the ones responsible for implementing the program and delivering the results. The working capital to Educate Girls is given to us by the investor. In this case, that's UBS Optimus Foundation. That's playing the role of the investor. And then finally, the person who purchases these outcomes. So in a social impact bond, it's the government. But here, because it's a test and a proof of concept, we have Children's Investment Future Fund, CIFF, that's actually purchasing the outcomes at the end of a 3-year contract. The bond is for 3 years. It's payment for enrollment and learning outcomes for children. It impacts about 18,000 kids in total. So in terms of the beneficiary pool, it's a fairly large number that we're reaching. And it's around 166 schools in Rajasthan. You know, in activity-based funding, there's certain things. For example, data only, or monitoring and evaluation, how we define it, goes from aggregating data from the ground up all the way to the management level, and then finally we put it out in a report to a donor. But here, actually, what we're finding is that the data and the monitoring and everything is in service of our frontline worker. Because my frontline worker says, if you want me to deliver to outcomes, then I need to have my own dashboard. I need to know what is my progress, and that's a great thing in the organization, because it actually empowers your frontline staff. And the entire organization has to switch gears and to be in service of that frontline staff. And that, I think, is absolutely a fantastic thing. And we're learning just so many more things, but these are some of the key pieces that I think, especially for Educate Girls, have been absolutely fantastic. Because there's money tied to each outcome, and you think much more deeply about how that outcome is actually getting delivered, you unravel a lot of pieces around what are the enablers and the barriers to reaching impact. So I'll give you an example around learning. Yes, so we started our learning activity, and in the middle we did a quick test to see are the children moving or not. And in mathematics, we found that a large number of children improved up to a particular point, and then the minute it came to doing subtraction with carryover, huge number of kids just got blocked there and couldn't make the step forward. And to remember, we work with rural, tribal children who are first generation learners. So we actually brought in pedagogy experts to kind of say, can you help us unlock this and see why are they getting stuck at this particular point? And what we realized was that our children did not understand unit tens, hundreds, like the place value. There was a particular gap in their pre-numeracy or in their learning gap, which was manifesting itself and was a barrier for them to move forward to higher levels of learning. Now that's what the bond does, because it's helping you to constantly think, what is the barrier, what is the enabler, that you can actually unlock those pieces. So we actually built lesson plans for 2 weeks only to teach children those micro skills that they were missing. And immediately we saw a bump in the learning level. And that's what the development impact bond is really teaching us, is a new way of execution, which is much more accountable to the child. It's holding us to a much, much higher accountability level. And we hope that it will push us to deliver far better results for them. Oh my God, that's a long list. It is really tough, really tough. I think it's the toughest thing I have done in my entire career, honestly. It's like this pain and pleasure all roll into one. I know that this is going to put me in a different state altogether, but the process of getting there is really, really difficult. Because there's no template. It's the first transaction of its kind, so I can't go to anybody else and say, how did you do it? There's so many parties involved that building that alignment, and everybody needs to move in the same direction, at the same time, and that's tough. Data is a huge issue. So, we have a lot of social impact bonds in the developed world. In the developed world, where you have much more authentic sources of data, but for us on the ground, when you're talking about an out-of-school girl, and there's not even an age proof. So I could say she's 6, you could say she's 7, and the parent might say she's 9. If you don't have authentic data systems, how will you tie payment metrics to them? So we've had to evolve an M&D system with a thick layer of empathy around it, because you're going to have those data challenges. But the idea is, how will you move across and how will you make that work? But that's really, really, really tough. Time and resource commitment, it is 5% or less than 5% of our budget, but it takes up around 25 to 30% of even my time. So it's not just expensive in that sense, but it really consumes us all in a way. The future. A lot of people ask me, what does one do with a transaction like this, and how does it impact Educate Girls' future and what we see in general? And for me, there's a couple of things here. One is that if we're able to crack this as a financing mechanism, then that's great, because hopefully we'll be able to bring a larger pool of money to the table to actually solve problems like this. The second for Educate Girls, for me personally, is that if this helps me to build an organization that has performance management in its DNA, that whether I'm at 1 child or 4 million children, that every part of the organization is delivering to outcomes, that's enormous success for us. Because at the end of the day, every single girl who goes through this and we achieve the outcomes for her, we know what will happen, right? If she's in school, every year she stays in school, she will have higher income. She will get married later. She'll be less likely to die in childbirth. Her children will be 40% more likely to be immunized, much higher rates of survival. There's just such a huge multiplier effect that can happen if those outcomes are delivered for her. And that's what we really hope, that it will build an organization in the future that you don't even have to think about it. That it will be a natural journey and progression, so that every child that comes through our program can actually unlock their full potential.